You know the scandal these days about the temporary foreign workers program, which has become a permanent business model for many Canadian businesses. Hundreds of thousands of people in just to work on a temporary basis. You know the scandal about foreign students paying tuition, high tuition, to get a questionable certificate or degree from an institution, but that allows them to work here. Well, you know what? In the late 70s, I covered something very similar in Vancouver, and it was a scandal whereby immigrants, especially people who really needed jobs, had to pay a hefty fee to get a job. Take a look.
This is CBUT Vancouver.
This is Summer Hourglass. 160 people, many of whom were poor to begin with, have lost their savings and as much as 4 months' back wages in a swindle involving the janitorial subcontracting industry. We talked with Vancouver lawyer David Mossop, who represents some victims. Can you give me an example of the type of person who's getting ripped off?
Usually it's an individual, an immigrant. He possibly is a family man with a wife and some children. He's having difficulty finding a job in this country, or else he's got a job that doesn't pay well and he wants to make some extra money. He doesn't know where to go. He perhaps hears about doing janitorial workers from a friend who's read it in the paper. And that's the type of person, low skills and low contact, work contact, inability to find work.
Can you give me an example?
Well, I have lots of examples here from people that have come into the law student program and into our office. For instance, here's an individual who entered into a contract last year. And in order to find a place, a janitorial place where he could do janitorial work, for instance, at a car dealership or something, he had to pay a finder's fee of $2,200. Okay, for this, he was told he would be guaranteed $1,100 a month from this janitorial contracting firm. Remember, all they do is find the places where you could do janitorial work. So far, this fellow's being owed approximately $5,300. In other words, he's done work for over $5,345 worth, and he hasn't been paid. Another individual who put up $2,000 up front, that is, he paid $2,000 to this contracting firm, he was guaranteed $1,000 a month. And he's owed $2,000.
So you pay $2,000 to get a job.
Right.
You work nights being a janitor.
With your wife and maybe your children.
Until you're owed anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 or maybe more,
right,
$1,000, and you never see that money.
That's correct. And if you get any money, there's usually a requirement that you pay an administration fee of anywhere from 10 to 25%.
How many people like this are we talking about? A couple dozen, or?
No, we're talking probably in the neighborhood of hundreds. We have not actually seen hundreds of people, but we see only a small fraction of these people, mainly because most of them don't speak English. Their concept of law is different from ours, and so they just accept this as a way of life.
Hundreds of people being cheated, and how much money overall are we talking?
We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I think we should also remember that in many of these cases, the people borrow money from finance companies or banks. And so it's not that they lose $2,000. They lose $2,000 in the interest.
Now, how does this happen? An ad goes in the paper, you mentioned, an immigrant sees it, a potential job,
right.
Then what happens?
Well, he goes down and he talks to the janitorial person. He may have someone there to translate for him, okay? He's told that he can make all this money. All he has to do is sign here and sign the contract. He signs it. He works for a while. He doesn't get paid.
And he's already paid out $2,000 finder's fee.
Right. He's probably borrowed the money, too. And he's worked. He works maybe for a couple of months or even a couple of days. But he doesn't get paid according to the contract. So he gives up.
What about the Department of Labor and minimum wages and
Well,
things
the
like that?
Department of Labor will say, well, this isn't an employee-employer relationship. It's a subcontract, or it's a contractual. And what these companies use is legal loopholes, to use the layman's language, to get away paying the minimum wage. These people are working effectively below the minimum wage. Now, I should point out there are reputable janitorial organizations that have union contracts that pay above the minimum wage. So we're not talking about every janitorial contract agency in the city, but there are significant numbers of those who are preying on immigrants. And not only are they not paying the minimum wage, they're not paying the people.
So is the Department of Labor's hands tied? Does the Minimum Wage Act not apply? The Labor Code, is all that down the drain?
No, there is argument that they are employers, and in Ontario they've been held as such. But the department is really not doing anything. They're just saying, well, our hands are tied, we can't do anything.
What about the police?
Well, there are indications there has been fraud in some of these cases, and files have been turned over to the Vancouver City Police. But so far, nothing has been done about it. It's difficult to prosecute fraud, okay? And I guess it's easier to pick people up for stealing out of Eaton's than this type of commercial fraud. It's another example. There's a law for the rich and a law for the poor. And this example is that if you're a rich crook, you can get away with it. But if you're a poor guy who steals from Eaton's, it's easier to apprehend and convict you.
Well, if I set up a company with the best of intentions or the worst of intentions, surely I have to go through bureaucrats in Victoria and follow certain procedures. Can't they scrutinize this?
Well, it's very easy to register a company in this province, and there's a feeling in Victoria that you have a right to register a company. You have a right to incorporate. Something like free speech. I feel that there should be legislation available so they can prohibit people who've shown themselves irresponsible in running up huge bills from incorporating. And this should be exercised vigorously by the people in Victoria. And I think this would go a long ways to stopping this type of activity.
I understand that some of the offices that have been cleaned, they still owe money. And they don't know whether to pay it to the janitors or whether to pay it to the janitorial service, and this money's suddenly in limbo. What could be done with that money? Can't the janitors get at it somehow and get paid?
Well, there are provisions under the Provincial Trade Practices Act that if any of these people were misled, that the government could seize the assets or the funds. But nothing of this nature has been done. And I don't know why it hasn't been done. I think it's generally the problem of governments that are slow to react, and each department sort of passing the buck. And in the meantime, these people are being ripped off, and it's not a very nice way to be introduced to Canada. You meet the sort of scum of the business community, and I think that's the way to describe some of these janitorial services. And that's who you meet, and you get ripped off right away.